The church bells of St. Patrick's Cathedral chimed melodiously across Manhattan on what should have been the happiest day of Alexander Pierce's life. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the backs of New York's elite who had gathered to witness the union of Wall Street's golden boy and socialite, Victoria Carmichael. Alexander stood at the altar, his 6'2" frame impeccably dressed in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, checking his Patek Philippe watch for the third time in 5 minutes. "She's just being dramatic," whispered Theodore, his best man and Harvard roommate, adjusting his cufflinks nervously. "You know Vicky loves an entrance." But Alexander knew. Something in his gut twisted with each passing minute. The string quartet had cycled through their repertoire twice. The 500 guests were shifting uncomfortably in the pews, whispers rippling through the cathedral like wind through autumn leaves. His phone vibrated. A text message. From her. "I can't do this, Alex. Not with someone who loves his empire more than he could ever love me. I'm sorry." The blood drained from his face as he stared at the screen. His hands trembled, not from sadness, but from the humiliation that thundered through his veins. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander's voice boomed through the cathedral before his PR team could draft a statement, before his mother could reach the altar with tears in her eyes. "It appears my bride has decided marriage isn't for her after all." Gasps echoed across the vaulted ceiling. "Please enjoy the reception at the plaza. The bar will be open. God knows I'll need it." His laugh was hollow, a sound that didn't match the steel forming around his heart with each breath. 18 months later, Alexander Pierce was no longer the man who'd waited at that altar. The business world trembled at his approach. Ruthless acquisitions, brutal boardroom takedowns, and a dating record that never extended beyond a single night had become his trademark. His net worth had doubled to $12.7 billion. "Mr. Pierce, your 9 o'clock is here." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom of his 87th floor office at Pierce Tower. "Send them in, Charlotte," he replied, not looking up from the acquisition documents scattered across his desk. Another company to dismantle. Another family legacy he would scatter to the winds without remorse. The door opened, but instead of the nervous executives he expected, a woman with wind-tousled chestnut hair stumbled into his office, balancing a tray of coffee cups and a worn messenger bag. "Sorry I'm late. The security guard downstairs needed 3 forms of ID, and then the elevator stopped on every floor and—" She looked up, hazel eyes widening as they met his cold blue stare. "You're not Janet from HR." Alexander Pierce leaned back in his leather chair, an eyebrow arched in equal parts irritation and curiosity. "No, I am not." "Oh God," the woman breathed, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim of the cups. "You're him. You're Alexander Pierce. And you are trespassing in my office," he replied, his voice like Arctic water. She straightened, gathering dignity despite the flush spreading across her cheeks. "I'm Emma Clark, the new community outreach coordinator for the Pierce Foundation. I was supposed to meet with HR for orientation, but clearly—" She gestured vaguely with the coffee tray. Alexander's lips thinned. The foundation, his mother's pet project that somehow hadn't fallen victim to his post-Victoria purge. 18th floor, Miss Clark, not 87th. Emma nodded, backing toward the door. "Right. Sorry to interrupt your—" She glanced at the papers on his desk, and something in her expression shifted. "Wait, is that Caldwell Publishing? You're buying Caldwell?" Alexander's eyes narrowed. "That information is confidential. They publish children's books," Emma said, setting the coffee tray down on his desk without invitation. "They run literacy programs in underfunded schools across the country. My mother read me their books when I was a kid. They're underperforming financially," Alexander replied mechanically, irritated by her presumption. "The market for physical books is—" "The market?" Emma interrupted, a spark igniting in her eyes. "Is that all you see when you look at a century-old family business that brings stories to children?" Something unfamiliar stirred in Alexander's chest. Discomfort, perhaps, or the long-forgotten sensation of being challenged. Before he could respond, Charlotte appeared at the door. "Ms. Clark, Janet is looking for you downstairs." Emma exhaled, gathering her bag. "I should go." She turned to leave but paused at the door. "Mr. Pierce, there's more to life than hostile takeovers and profit margins. Sometimes the most valuable things can't be listed on a balance sheet." After she left, Alexander sat motionless, staring at the coffee she'd left behind. One cup had his name scrawled on it in messy handwriting, with a smiley face dotting the I in Pierce. For the first time in 18 months, something cracked in the ice around his heart, barely perceptible, but there nonetheless. He took a sip of the coffee. It was exactly how he liked it, black, no sugar. A coincidence that felt strangely like fate. He reached for the Caldwell publishing file, hesitating for just a moment before closing it. "Charlotte," he called through the intercom. "Schedule a meeting with the new community outreach coordinator, Ms. Clark, tomorrow." Alexander Pierce wasn't a man who believed in second chances. But something about Emma Clark made him wonder if perhaps he should. Emma Clark's tiny apartment in Brooklyn was a testament to her personality. Colorful, slightly chaotic, and filled with books. She kicked off her sensible flats and collapsed onto her second-hand couch, still mortified by her encounter with Alexander Pierce. "You walked into the office of the most notorious CEO in New York, spilled coffee, and lectured him about children's books," she groaned to her roommate Zoe, a struggling Broadway dancer who was currently stretching into an impossible position on their living room floor. "Wait," Zoe paused mid-stretch. "The Alexander Pierce, the heartless billionaire the tabloids are always going on about?" "The very same," Emma confirmed, burying her face in a throw pillow. "God, Zoe, if you could have seen his eyes, it was like looking into a frozen ocean." Zoe rolled onto her feet with dancer's grace. "What did he do?" "Fire you on the spot. I heard he once fired his chef for overcooking his steak." "That's the weird part," Emma mused, sitting up. "He asked for a meeting tomorrow. Either you're getting fired with extra flair or—" Zoe wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. "Don't even go there," Emma warned, throwing the pillow at her friend. "You know I don't date men who think the world belongs to them." As if on cue, her phone buzzed with a text from Brian, her ex-boyfriend. "I miss you, Em. Coffee sometime?" She declined without hesitation. 6 months of dating a man who considered her passion for community work adorable, but ultimately impractical, had been enough. "Besides," Emma continued, "since David dumped me for that yoga instructor, I'm officially on a love sabbatical. Men are exhausting." Says the girl who cries at rom-coms and keeps a Pinterest board of dream wedding dresses. Zoe teased, heading to the kitchen. Emma couldn't argue. Despite her string of disappointing relationships, she remained stubbornly, perhaps foolishly, committed to the idea that love, real, transformative love, existed. "Speaking of your job," Zoe called from the kitchen, "isn't the Pierce Foundation gala tomorrow night? The one with all the rich people pretending to care about charity?" Emma groaned again. "Don't remind me. Janet says all staff have to attend." "Well, if you're meeting Alexander Pierce tomorrow and not getting fired, you'll need something to wear that says 'Take me seriously,' but also, 'I'm not intimidated by you,'" Zoe declared, returning with 2 glasses of wine. "I'm pretty sure my entire wardrobe says I shop at thrift stores and sale racks." Emma laughed, accepting the glass gratefully. "Lucky for you," Zoe replied with a grin. "My last boyfriend was a stylist. Emergency makeover time." Across town, in his penthouse, overlooking Central Park, Alexander Pierce was doing something utterly out of character. He was researching Emma Clark. Her social media presence was minimal, but revealed a woman passionate about literacy programs, farmers markets, and rescuing senior dogs. Her LinkedIn profile showed a BA in English literature from a state university and a series of jobs at nonprofits with steadily increasing responsibility. Nothing about her should have captured his attention. She wasn't from his world. No prestigious schools, no power connections, no family money. Yet he couldn't shake the way she'd looked at him that morning, like she saw past the billion-dollar empire to something he'd buried beneath it. "Sir, your dinner reservation at 11 Madison Park is in 30 minutes, his house manager announced. "Cancel it." Alexander replied, closing his laptop. I'll eat here tonight. The house manager blinked in surprise. Alexander Pierce never deviated from his schedule. Later, as he stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse with a glass of scotch, Alexander's thoughts drifted to Victoria. After the wedding debacle, he'd erased her from his life so thoroughly that her name wasn't permitted to be spoken in his presence. His phone rang. Theodore. Are you coming to the Pierce Foundation Gala tomorrow? His friend asked, without preamble. I wasn't planning on it, Alexander replied. These charity events were his mother's domain. He simply wrote the checks. You should, Theodore pressed. The board is getting restless about your public image problem. Showing up at your own foundation's gala might help. Alexander swirled the amber liquid in his glass. Since when do I care what people think of me? Since your last 3 deals fell through because potential partners are afraid you'll dismantle their family legacies for spare parts, Theodore countered bluntly. After a pause, Alexander sighed. Fine. 1 hour. Excellent. Theodore sounded too pleased. By the way, have you thought any more about the Caldwell deal? Alexander's gaze fell to his desk, where the acquisition file lay untouched since Emma Clark had walked out of his office. It's under review, he replied neutrally. The next morning, Emma arrived at the Pierce Foundation offices on the 18th floor 15 minutes early, determined to make a better second impression. Janet from HR had been cryptically unhelpful about why Alexander Pierce wanted to meet with her, a detail that had kept Emma awake for half the night. Ms. Clark? Charlotte, Pierce's assistant from yesterday, appeared in the doorway of the small conference room where Emma waited. Mr. Pierce will see you now. Follow me, please. Emma smoothed her blazer, borrowed from Zoe and the nicest thing she'd ever worn, and followed Charlotte to the elevator. To her surprise, they went up, not to the 87th floor, but to the rooftop. The doors opened to reveal a stunning rooftop garden, complete with flowering plants, small trees, and vegetables growing in raised beds. In the center, Alexander Pierce stood with his back to her, speaking quietly to an elderly gardener. Ms. Clark is here, sir, Charlotte announced, before retreating to the elevator. Alexander turned, and Emma was struck again by his presence. Today he wore no suit jacket, his crisp white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing tanned forearms and an expensive watch. He looked less severe but no less imposing. Ms. Clark, he nodded. Thank you for coming. It didn't feel optional. Emma replied honestly, then bit her lip. Sorry, I mean good morning, Mr. Pierce. To her shock, the corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. You don't strike me as someone who says things that aren't optional, he observed. Emma tilted her head, studying him. Was that a compliment or an accusation? An observation, he replied, gesturing for her to walk with him along a stone path through the garden. Do you know what this is? A garden? Emma ventured, confused by the obvious question. The Pierce Foundation Urban Agriculture Initiative, he corrected. We're developing rooftop gardens on all our properties throughout the city. The produce goes to food banks and community kitchens. Emma looked around with new appreciation. That's actually amazing. You sound surprised. Well, yesterday you were planning to dismantle a beloved children's publisher. Forgive me if I didn't peg you as Captain Planet. Alexander stopped walking, fixing her with a penetrating gaze. The foundation was my mother's idea. I fund it. But you don't believe in it, Emma challenged. I believe in measurable outcomes, he replied carefully. Which brings me to why I asked you here. I understand you're developing a new literacy program. Emma blinked, startled by his knowledge of her work. Yes, it pairs reading mentors with children in underserved schools. We're hoping to expand it next year if we get funding. Show me the proposal. I'm sorry? The proposal, he repeated. I assume you have one. It's still in development, Emma admitted. I've only been here 3 days. Alexander crossed his arms. Then we'll need to accelerate your timeline. I want a full presentation at the gala tonight. Emma's jaw dropped. Tonight? That's impossible. I'd need stats, projections, logistics. Is it impossible, Ms. Clark, or merely difficult? His eyes held a challenge that stirred something rebellious in her. Why the sudden interest in literacy programs? She asked suspiciously. Alexander's expression gave nothing away. Let's just say your passion for Caldwell Publishing was noted. Understanding dawned. You're reconsidering the acquisition. I'm exploring alternatives, he corrected smoothly. Be ready at 8 p.m. And Ms. Clark? His eyes flickered briefly over her borrowed blazer. The gala is black tie. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Emma leaned against the wall, heart racing. She had 12 hours to create a full program proposal, find a gown suitable for a black tie event on her nonprofit salary, and figure out why Alexander Pierce, a man known for his ruthlessness, was suddenly interested in saving a children's publishing house. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. How did it go? Emma typed back. Either I just saved a publishing company or I'm about to make a complete fool of myself in front of Manhattan's elite. Maybe both. For the first time since their encounter, she smiled. Whatever game Alexander Pierce was playing, she was in. By 7:45 p.m., Emma was in a state of controlled panic outside the glittering Plaza Hotel. Yellow cabs and sleek black town cars deposited Manhattan's elite onto the red carpet leading to the Pierce Foundation Gala. Photographers called out to recognizable faces as camera flashes lit up the night. I can't do this, Emma whispered, clutching her presentation notes in one hand and her borrowed evening bag in the other. You absolutely can, Zoe assured her, adjusting the delicate straps of Emma's midnight blue gown, a miracle find from her dancer friend's costume collection. You look stunning. Your presentation is brilliant, and you're about to save children's literacy. The dress was simple but elegant, falling in a silken waterfall to the ground with a modest slit that revealed just enough leg to be sophisticated without trying too hard. Her chestnut hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. Another miracle courtesy of Zoe's styling skills. What if I trip or spill something or call him Mr. Heartless Billionaire to his face? Emma fretted. Zoe gripped her shoulders. Emma Clark, you once gave a presentation to the mayor with the flu. You can handle one intimidating rich guy. Taking a deep breath, Emma nodded. Okay, go kill it at your audition. I'll text you later. As Zoe hailed a taxi to her Broadway audition, Emma squared her shoulders and approached the entrance. The security guard checked his list. Name? Emma Clark. I'm with the foundation. He nodded and waved her through. Emma stepped into a world of crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and wealth beyond imagination. The ballroom of the plaza had been transformed into an enchanted garden, with towering floral arrangements and twinkling lights that mimicked the night sky. Ms. Clark. Charlotte materialized beside her, elegant in a simple black dress. Mr. Pierce asked me to escort you to the presentation area. Emma followed her through the crowd, acutely aware of the subtle differences between herself and the other women. Their jewelry was real, their dresses were designer, and their confidence came from lifetimes of belonging in rooms like this. Charlotte led her to a small staging area near a podium. You'll present after Mr. Pierce's opening remarks. You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Emma squeaked. I prepared for 30. Charlotte's expression was sympathetic but firm. Rich people get bored easily. Hit the highlights. Focus on emotional impact and concrete outcomes. Before Emma could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, and a spotlight illuminated the main entrance. Alexander Pierce appeared, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Emma's breath caught. In his tailored tuxedo, he was devastating, tall, powerful, and so handsome it seemed almost unfair. But it was the change in his demeanor that truly captured her attention. Here he moved with the easy confidence of a king among his subjects. When he smiled, a practiced, public smile that didn't reach his eyes, women nearby visibly swooned. He took the podium, and the room fell silent. Good evening. His rich baritone filled the space without effort. Thank you all for supporting the Pierce Foundation tonight. As he delivered a perfectly calibrated welcome speech, Emma frantically, condensed her notes, crossing out entire sections and highlighting key statistics. She was so absorbed in her task that she almost missed her cue. "Tonight, we're introducing a new initiative," Alexander announced. "Our community outreach coordinator, Emma Clark, will present a pioneering literacy program that exemplifies our commitment to educational excellence." The spotlight swung to Emma and hundreds of eyes followed. She froze momentarily, then remembered Zoe's words. With a deep breath, she walked to the podium, her borrowed heels clicking confidently against the marble floor. Alexander stepped aside, their eyes meeting briefly as they exchanged places. "Impress me," he murmured, so quietly only she could hear. The challenge in his tone sparked something in Emma, a determination to prove herself, to show this jaded billionaire that idealism and practicality could coexist. She smiled at the crowd and began. "When I was 8 years old, my mother lost her job. We moved into a studio apartment, and for months we lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. But every night she read to me from books published by Caldwell Publishing." Emma glanced at Alexander, whose expression revealed nothing. "Those stories showed me worlds beyond our tiny apartment. They taught me that circumstances can change, that hardship isn't permanent, and that imagination is sometimes the most powerful tool we have." For the next 9 minutes, Emma wove statistics and logistics into a compelling narrative about connecting successful professionals with children who needed mentors. She outlined costs, benefits, metrics for success, and expansion opportunities, all while keeping the emotional core of the program front and center. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the room erupted in applause. Relief washed over her as Charlotte gave her an approving nod from the sidelines. As Emma stepped away from the podium, Alexander returned to thank her. His public smile was in place, but something different flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. The formal presentations concluded and the evening shifted to mingling and dancing. Emma found herself surrounded by potential donors, answering questions about her program with growing confidence. "Quite impressive," a refined voice commented from behind her. Emma turned to find an elegant woman in her 60s with Alexander's striking blue eyes and patrician features. "Mrs. Pierce," Emma realized, extending her hand. "Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight." "Call me Eleanor," Alexander's mother insisted, taking Emma's hand in both of hers. "Alexander tells me you've only been with the foundation for 3 days? Remarkable. Your son mentioned me?" Emma couldn't hide her surprise. Eleanor's eyes twinkled. "In fact, he specifically asked me to meet you. Very unusual for Alexander. He typically takes little interest in the foundation's staff." Before Emma could process this information, the crowd shifted and Alexander appeared with 2 champagne flutes. "Mother," he greeted Eleanor with a kiss on her cheek. "I see you've met Ms. Clark." "Indeed, she's everything you said she was." Alexander cleared his throat, handing Emma a champagne flute. "If you'll excuse us, Mother, I need to borrow Ms. Clark for a moment." "Of course, darling." Eleanor's knowing smile as she departed made Emma wonder exactly what Alexander had told his mother about her. Alexander guided her through the crowd with a light touch at the small of her back. A touch that sent inexplicable warmth up her spine despite her determination to remain immune to his charms. They stepped onto a terrace overlooking Central Park, the May evening surprisingly mild. Stars twinkled above the city skyline, competing with the lights of Manhattan. "Your presentation was effective," Alexander acknowledged, leaning against the stone balustrade. Emma raised an eyebrow. "High praise from the heartless billionaire." His expression darkened. "You've been reading the tabloids." "Hard to avoid them in the checkout line," she replied, sipping her champagne. "Is it true you fired an employee for sneezing during a board meeting?" "Don't believe everything you read, Ms. Clark." "Emma," she corrected. "If we're going to work together on this project, you should call me Emma." Alexander studied her for a long moment, his gaze so intense that she fought the urge to look away. "Very well, Emma," he finally said, her name sounding different in his mouth, warmer, more intimate. "You may call me Alexander." Not Mr. Pierce, or Sir, or your billionaire majesty, she teased. The corner of his mouth twitched, that almost smile she'd glimpsed earlier. I think we're past formalities given that you lectured me about the moral value of children's books within 5 minutes of meeting me. Emma laughed, relaxing slightly. In my defense, I was running on 4 hours of sleep and too much coffee. And today? What's your excuse for challenging me at every turn? I don't need an excuse, she replied honestly. You're used to people agreeing with whatever you say because of your money and power. Someone needs to treat you like a normal human being. Alexander's expression shifted subtly, revealing a glimpse of something vulnerable beneath his carefully constructed facade. And what makes you think I want to be treated like a normal human being? Everyone does, Emma said softly. Even billionaires, who've convinced themselves they're above such mundane desires. Music from the ballroom spilled onto the terrace as the orchestra struck up a waltz. Alexander set down his champagne flute and extended his hand. Dance with me, Emma. It wasn't a request so much as a challenge. Emma hesitated, acutely aware of crossing professional boundaries, of the dangerous territory she was entering. I'm a terrible dancer, she warned, setting down her own glass. I'll lead, he promised, his voice dropping to a timbre that sent shivers across her skin. Emma placed her hand in his, and he drew her close. Not inappropriately so, but close enough that she could detect the subtle scent of his cologne, feel the solid strength of his frame. As they moved together under the stars, Emma became aware of eyes watching from inside the ballroom. Alexander Pierce dancing with an unknown woman was evidently noteworthy. People are staring, she murmured. Let them, he replied, his hand warm against the small of her back. Is this part of some strategy? Dancing with the Foundation's newest employee to show your commitment to philanthropy? Her tone was light, but the question was genuine. Alexander's steps faltered almost imperceptibly. Do you always assume ulterior motives? When it comes to men who could buy and sell my entire apartment building without checking their bank balance, yes. He guided her through a perfect turn, his touch steady and sure. A fair assessment. But no, Emma, dancing with you isn't strategic, it's a preference. The simple honesty in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, they moved in silence, the music enveloping them in a private world despite the crowd. Nearby, why did you really ask me to present tonight? She finally asked. Alexander considered her question, his blue eyes searching her face as if looking for something specific. Your passion for Caldwell Publishing, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? That not everything of value can be quantified on a balance sheet. Before Emma could respond, they were interrupted by Theodore, who approached with obvious reluctance. Sorry, Alex, but the mayor is leaving and wants to say goodbye. Alexander nodded, stepping back from Emma with visible regret. We'll continue this conversation later. Wait for me here. As he disappeared into the crowd, Emma leaned against the balustrade, trying to steady her racing heart. What was happening? She'd come here tonight prepared to advocate for literacy programs, not to waltz under the stars with a man whose reputation as a cold-hearted tycoon was legendary. A woman's voice cut through her thoughts. He hasn't danced with anyone since Victoria. Emma turned to find Charlotte watching her with an unreadable expression. Victoria? She echoed, though she already suspected the answer. Charlotte hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. His fiancé. She left him at the altar 18 months ago. After that, he changed. Before Emma could ask more questions, Charlotte's phone buzzed. She checked it and frowned. Mr. Pierce has been called away on urgent business. He asks that you accept his apologies and says his driver will take you home whenever you're ready. Just like that, the spell was broken. Emma nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Of course, thank you. As she watched Charlotte walk away, Emma couldn't help feeling she'd just been granted a rare glimpse behind Alexander Pierce's carefully constructed walls, only to have those walls slam firmly back into place. But not before she'd seen something worth exploring further. the possibility that beneath the heartless billionaire's icy exterior beat a heart capable of thawing. 3 days had passed since the gala, and Emma hadn't heard a word from Alexander Pierce. Maybe he's ghosting the entire foundation, she suggested to Janet as they sorted through donation pledges in the conference room. Do billionaires ghost charities? Is that a thing? Janet chuckled, pushing her glasses up her nose. Mr. Pierce doesn't typically involve himself in day-to-day operations. The gala was an anomaly. Emma nodded, trying to focus on the task at hand rather than replaying their dance on the terrace for the 100th time. She'd resolved to be professional. Alexander Pierce was essentially her boss, and whatever moment they'd shared had clearly been just that, a moment. Still, she couldn't help checking the news on her phone during lunch break. The business section featured a headline that made her nearly choke on her sandwich. Pierce Industries abandons Caldwell Publishing acquisition. The article detailed how the deal had unexpectedly fallen through, with sources speculating about Alexander's mysterious change of heart. Industry analysts were baffled given his history of never backing away from profitable acquisitions. Emma stared at her phone, a mixture of elation and confusion washing over her. Had her presentation actually swayed him? Or was this just a business decision that coincidentally aligned with her plea? Emma? Charlotte's voice startled her. The assistant stood in the doorway of the break room, impeccable as always. Mr. Pierce would like to see you now. Emma's heart leapt to her throat. At the tower? Charlotte nodded. The car is waiting. 15 minutes later, Emma found herself ascending to the 87th floor, mentally rehearsing what she would say about the Caldwell decision. The elevator doors opened directly into Alexander's office suite, a modern temple of glass and steel with panoramic views of Manhattan. He stood with his back to her, gazing out at the city, phone pressed to his ear. In his tailored charcoal suit, he cut an imposing silhouette against the afternoon sky. I don't care what it costs, he was saying, his voice clipped. Get it done. He ended the call and turned, his expression inscrutable as he took in her appearance. Emma suddenly wished she'd worn something more impressive than her simple navy dress and cardigan. You abandoned the Caldwell acquisition, she said without preamble. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Hello to you too, Emma. Sorry, she flushed. Hello, Alexander. You abandoned the Caldwell acquisition, she repeated, unable to contain her curiosity. I did, he confirmed, gesturing for her to take a seat in one of the sleek chairs facing his desk. Emma remained standing. Why? Alexander studied her for a moment, then moved to a small bar cabinet and poured 2 glasses of water. Your presentation was compelling. And that's it? One presentation and you change your mind about a multi-million-dollar deal? He handed her a glass, his fingers brushing hers briefly. You sound disappointed. I thought you'd be pleased. I am pleased, Emma insisted, taking a sip to organize her thoughts. Just surprised. You don't strike me as someone who changes course easily. I'm not, Alexander admitted, leaning against his desk. But your arguments had merit. Caldwell's cultural value outweighs its financial underperformance. Emma felt a ridiculous surge of pride. So what happens now? To Caldwell, I mean. That's why I asked you here. Alexander set down his glass. I'm not abandoning my interest in Caldwell. I'm transforming it. He picked up a tablet from his desk and handed it to her. On the screen was a proposal for a new division of Pierce Industries called Pierce Publishing, with Caldwell as its cornerstone. You're buying them anyway? Emma frowned, scanning the document. I'm partnering with them, Alexander corrected, providing capital and resources while preserving their editorial independence and expanding their literacy programs. Emma looked up from the tablet, searching his face. This is actually brilliant. Try not to sound so shocked, he said dryly, but there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. And how do I factor into this plan? She asked, setting the tablet down. Is that why I'm here? Alexander moved closer, his proximity sending her pulse racing despite her determination to remain composed. "I want you to lead the outreach division of Pierce Publishing. Coordinate between the publishers and your literacy program." Emma blinked. That's a significant promotion for someone who's been with the foundation less than 2 weeks. "I don't care about seniority. I care about results." His gaze was steady. "You understand what Caldwell means to people. You have the passion and vision this project needs. And if I say no, then say no," he replied simply. "But I think you want this as much as I do." The double meaning in his words hung in the air between them. Emma felt herself blushing again and turned toward the windows to hide it. "You know," she said, looking out at the sprawling city, "people say you changed after Victoria left you at the altar, that you became cold, ruthless." She heard him stiffen behind her. "Charlotte talks too much." "She cares about you," Emma replied, turning back to face him. "So does your mother. They see what this armor you've built is costing you." Alexander's jaw tightened. "My personal life is not relevant to this business proposal." "Isn't it?" Emma challenged. "The Alexander Pierce who asked me to dance at the gala isn't the same man who almost dismantled a beloved publishing house for profit margins. Which one am I dealing with now?" Something flickered across his face. Vulnerability quickly masked by practiced indifference. "People change, Emma. Sometimes for a moment, sometimes permanently. And sometimes they just need someone to remind them who they really are," she said softly. Alexander moved toward her slowly as if approaching a wild animal that might flee. "And who do you think I really am?" Emma held her ground, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I think you're someone who built walls to protect himself from pain, and then forgot how to lower them." He was close now, close enough that she could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, smell the subtle scent of his cologne. "And you believe you know how to lower them?" "I believe everyone deserves a second chance at happiness," she replied honestly. "Even heartless billionaires." Alexander's expression softened, and for a breathless moment Emma thought he might kiss her. Instead, his phone rang, shattering the tension between them. He checked the screen and frowned. "I have to take this, it's Tokyo." Emma nodded, stepping back. "Of course, should I—" "Wait," he said almost urgently. "Please, this won't take long." As Alexander took the call in rapid-fire Japanese, Emma wandered to the far side of his massive office, giving him privacy while taking in the space. That reflected his personality, elegant, minimalist, and ultimately revealing very little. A small collection of framed photographs on a side table caught her attention. Most were formal. Alexander shaking hands with world leaders, receiving awards, standing beside his mother at charity events. But one stood apart. A candid shot of a much younger Alexander, perhaps in his early 20s, laughing on a sailboat, his arm around an older man with the same striking blue eyes. "My father," Alexander's voice came from behind her. "That was taken the summer before he died." Emma turned, surprised by the openness in his expression. "You look happy." "I was," he said simply. "We both were." "What happened to him?" "Heart attack. Unexpected. He was only 52. Alexander's gaze lingered on the photograph. "He built this company from nothing. After he died, I promised myself I would make it 10 times more successful." "Is that why you work so hard?" "To honor his memory." Alexander considered this as if the question had never occurred to him. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's just easier to focus on work than on other things. "Like relationships?" Emma ventured. His eyes met hers, more vulnerable than she'd seen them. "When Victoria left, I realized something. Love is a liability in my world. It makes you weak, susceptible to pain. It also makes life worth living," Emma countered gently. "Does it?" Alexander asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. "You mentioned your own love sabbatical to Charlotte. Have your romantic experiences been so fulfilling?" Emma laughed softly. Touché. But my disappointments haven't made me give up on the possibility. The possibility of what? A fairy tale ending? His tone wasn't mocking, but genuinely questioning. Of connection, she clarified. Of finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses to stay anyway. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. And you believe such people exist? I have to. Emma smiled. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? The intercom on Alexander's desk buzzed. Mr. Pierce, your 3 o'clock is here. He pressed a button. Reschedule them, Charlotte. But sir, it's the Singapore delegation. Reschedule, he repeated firmly. To Emma's shock, he added, I'm taking the rest of the afternoon off. Charlotte's stunned silence spoke volumes before she managed a faint, yes, sir. Alexander turned to Emma. How do you feel about boats? Boats? She echoed, confused by the sudden change of subject. My father believed you could tell everything important about a person by how they handled themselves on the water. His eyes held a challenge. I keep a sailboat at North Cove Marina. The weather's perfect today. Emma stared at him. You want to go sailing? Now? With me? Yes to all 3 questions, he replied, a genuine smile transforming his face, making him look years younger. But I have work to finish, and you have meetings, and… Emma, he interrupted gently. When was the last time you did something spontaneous? She thought about her carefully planned life, her steady progress up the career ladder, her sensible dating choices. It's been a while, she admitted. Then say yes, Alexander urged, already reaching for his phone to make arrangements. Emma knew she should refuse. Going sailing with her billionaire boss was unprofessional, impulsive, and probably unwise. But looking at Alexander, seeing the walls around him beginning to crumble, she couldn't bring herself to say no. All right, she agreed, but I should warn you, I know nothing about sailing. His smile widened. Perfect. I get to teach you something for a change. 2 hours later, Emma stood on the deck of Alexander's sailboat, a sleek 40-foot vessel named Second Wind, hair whipping around her face as they cut through the waters of New York Harbor. Manhattan's skyline glittered behind them. The Statue of Liberty stood majestically to their right, and ahead stretched the vast openness of the Atlantic. Alexander moved with confidence around the boat, occasionally calling out instructions that Emma did her best to follow. He'd shed his suit jacket and tie, rolled up his sleeves, and somehow looked more at home here than in his penthouse office. Ready to take the helm? He asked, gesturing to the wheel. Emma's eyes widened. You're joking, right? I'll crash into the Statue of Liberty and make international headlines. I won't let that happen, he promised, his voice warm with amusement. Trust me. Those 2 words hung between them, weighted with meaning beyond this moment on the water. Emma stepped forward, allowing Alexander to position her in front of the wheel. He stood behind her, arms reaching around to cover her hands with his, showing her how to feel the wind and respond to the water's movement. His chest pressed lightly against her back, solid and warm. There, he murmured near her ear, sending shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. You're doing it. As the boat responded to her touch, Emma felt a surge of exhilaration. She laughed, the sound carrying across the water, free and genuine. This is amazing, she exclaimed, turning her head to look at him. Their faces were inches apart, and something in Alexander's expression made her breath catch. He was looking at her with a mixture of wonder and longing that resonated with her own conflicted feelings. Emma, he said softly, her name almost lost in the wind. Before she could respond, a massive wave hit the boat, sending her stumbling backward into his chest. Alexander's arms instinctively tightened around her, steadying her against him. For a moment they stayed frozen in that embrace, the boundary between professional and personal blurring with each breath. Then slowly, Alexander released her, his fingers trailing reluctantly over her arms as he stepped back. We should head in, he said, his voice rough. Storm's coming. Emma looked toward the horizon, where dark clouds were indeed gathering, and nodded. As Alexander navigated them back toward the marina, she hugged herself against the cooling air, wondering if she was sailing into dangerous waters in more ways than one. Because despite every rational argument against it, Emma Clark was falling for the heartless billionaire, and based on the way he'd looked at her just now, Alexander Pierce might be falling too. 2 weeks after their sailing adventure, Emma found herself in the unprecedented position of having Alexander Pierce's private number in her phone and no idea whether to use it. Their professional relationship had accelerated at lightning speed. The Koch Pierce Publishing Initiative was moving forward, with Emma officially promoted to Director of Outreach. She'd been given a corner office on the 42nd floor, a substantial salary increase, and a team of 5 dedicated staff members, but their personal relationship had stalled in a nebulous territory between colleagues and something more. Since that almost moment on the sailboat, Alexander had maintained a careful professional distance, attending meetings via video conference from Tokyo, sending congratulatory emails about project milestones, but never again suggesting anything as personal as an afternoon sail. "You're overthinking this," Zoe insisted as they jogged through Prospect Park early Sunday morning. "The man canceled meetings with international delegates to take you sailing. He's interested." "Then why hasn't he called?" Emma panted, struggling to keep up with her dancer friend's pace. "It's been 2 weeks." "Because he's a billionaire with commitment issues who got left at the altar?" Zoe suggested. "Or maybe he's respecting professional boundaries, or waiting for you to make the next move." "There is no next move," Emma protested. "He's my boss." "Sort of, it's complicated." "Life is complicated," Zoe shrugged. "But you light up when you talk about him." "That's not complicated, that's chemistry." Emma slowed to a walk, breathing heavily. "Even if you're right, what am I supposed to do? Text him, 'Hey, remember that almost kiss on your yacht? Want to try again?'" Zoe's response was interrupted by Emma's phone ringing. She checked the screen and froze. "It's him," she whispered. Zoe's eyes widened. "Answer it." With trembling fingers, Emma accepted the call. "Hello?" "Emma." Alexander's voice was tight with strain. "Are you near a television?" "No, I'm out jogging." "Why? What's happened?" "Victoria's back," he said flatly, "and she's talking to the press." By the time Emma reached her apartment and turned on the TV, the story was everywhere. Victoria Carmichael, looking stunning in a white designer dress reminiscent of a wedding gown, giving tearful interviews about her terrible mistake in leaving Alexander Pierce at the altar. "I was young and scared," she told a sympathetic reporter. "Alexander is such a powerful man, I felt overwhelmed by his world. But we never stopped loving each other." Emma watched in horrified fascination as footage played of Victoria attempting to enter Pierce Tower, security blocking her path as she pleaded dramatically for a chance to explain. "Sources close to the billionaire say he's considering reconciliation," the reporter intoned seriously. "Victoria Carmichael comes from one of New York's oldest families, and the union would strengthen Pierce Industries' position in several key markets." Emma turned off the TV, feeling sick. Of course Victoria had returned. Of course the press was spinning it as a fairy tale reconciliation. And of course Alexander would consider taking her back. She was beautiful, connected, and from his world. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "My driver will pick you up in 20 minutes. We need to talk." Emma stared at the message, her stomach knotting. Was he going to tell her he was getting back with Victoria? Explain why their almost something could never be? She showered and changed mechanically, opting for a simple sundress that made her feel at least marginally confident. When the sleek black town car pulled up outside her Brooklyn apartment building, she took a deep breath and got in. To her surprise, the car didn't head toward Manhattan, but instead toward the marina. Alexander was waiting beside his sailboat, tension evident in every line of his body. "Thank you for coming," he said formally as she approached. Emma nodded, keeping a careful distance between them. "The press seems to think you'll be getting back together with Victoria." Alexander's jaw tightened. The press knows nothing. So you're not considering reconciliation? The question escaped before she could stop herself. His eyes met hers, intense and searching. Why would you think that? Emma looked away. She's beautiful. She's from your world. And according to Charlotte, you haven't been the same since she left. That's true, Alexander acknowledged quietly. I haven't been the same. I built walls, became the heartless billionaire everyone thinks I am. He gestured toward the boat. Can we talk on board? More private. Emma followed him onto the second wind, settling on a cushioned bench while Alexander remained standing, tension radiating from him as he gripped the railing. Victoria showed up at my penthouse last night, he said abruptly. She wants me back. Emma's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral. I see. No, you don't. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it in a way that made him look unexpectedly vulnerable. For 18 months I dreamed of this moment, her returning, admitting she made a mistake. And now? Emma asked quietly. Alexander turned to face her fully. And now it means nothing. Because somewhere between a chance meeting with a woman, carrying too many coffee cups and an afternoon sailing on this boat, everything changed. Hope fluttered in Emma's chest, but she tamped it down. What exactly are you saying, Alexander? He moved to sit beside her, close enough that their knees nearly touched. When Victoria left me, I believed love was a weakness I couldn't afford. I built an empire on that belief, became someone I thought was invincible. And now? Now I realized that man was just afraid, he admitted, his voice dropping to a near whisper, afraid of feeling anything that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet. Alexander reached for her hand, his touch sending electricity up her arm. Emma, you walked into my office and challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. You made me remember who I was before Victoria, before the armor. Emma's heart was racing now. And who is that? Someone who believes in second chances, he said simply. Someone capable of taking risks that have nothing to do with business acquisitions. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I sent Victoria away, and I told her, and the press. Why? Emma blinked in confusion. What did you tell them? Alexander's lips curved into a genuine smile. That my heart is no longer available. Before Emma could process this statement, Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and chuckled. What is it? She asked. He handed her the phone. On the screen was a news alert with the headline, Heartless Billionaire No More. Pierce declares. Love for Foundation employee. Emma gasped. You told the press about us before telling me? Technically, I told Victoria about us in my lobby where several reporters happened to be lurking, Alexander clarified, looking not at all repentant. But I should have spoken to you first. It was impulsive. Impulsive? Emma echoed. From Alexander Pierce, the man who schedules his breathing? I'm learning spontaneity, he replied with a hint of mischief. I have an excellent teacher. Emma handed back his phone, suddenly uncertain. Alexander, I'm not from your world. I shop at thrift stores and eat ramen when rent is due. The tabloids will tear me apart. Let them try, he said fiercely. Emma, I don't want you to fit into my world. I want to build a new one with you. Before she could respond, Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn book. What's this? She asked, as he handed it to her. The first Caldwell book my mother ever read to me, he said softly. About a prince who builds walls around his castle until a gardener shows him how to grow something beautiful instead. Emma opened the children's book with trembling fingers. Inside the cover, Alexander had written, To new beginnings and second chances. Sometimes the most valuable things can't be listed on a balance sheet. Tears pricked at her eyes. You remembered what I said. I remember everything about you, Alexander confessed. Your courage, your conviction, your belief that love is still possible even after disappointment. He took her hands in his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. I can't promise I won't revert to the heartless billionaire sometimes. Old habits die hard. but I can promise to try every day to be worthy of a second chance at love. Are you asking me to be your girlfriend, Alexander Pierce? Emma couldn't help the smile spreading across her face. I'm asking for much more than that, he replied seriously. I'm asking you to be my partner in every sense of the word. To challenge me when I need challenging. To remind me what matters beyond profit margins. To build something meaningful together. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. And yes, I'm asking if I can finally kiss you without a wave interrupting us. Emma laughed, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. I think that can be arranged. When his lips finally met hers, it was everything an almost reformed heartless billionaire and a hopeless romantic could have wished for. Tender yet passionate, a promise of second chances and new beginnings. They were so lost in each other that they didn't notice the small boat of paparazzi approaching until camera flashes began popping nearby. Alexander pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against hers. I should have anticipated that. Now you tell me, Emma groaned, hiding her face against his chest. He chuckled, wrapping his arms around her protectively. We could sail away. I know a secluded cove up the coast. Emma looked up at him, struck by the lightness in his expression, as if layers of grief and guardedness had finally lifted. Is the heartless billionaire suggesting we flee responsibility? The heartless billionaire is on indefinite hiatus, Alexander corrected, brushing a strand of hair from her face with remarkable tenderness. Though I may need frequent reminders. I think I can manage that, Emma promised, rising on tiptoes, to kiss him again, ignoring the distant clicks of cameras. 1 year later, the headline of the New York Times business section read, Pierce Publishing revolutionizes literacy programs nationwide. Below was a photograph of Alexander and Emma at the grand opening of the first Pierce Caldwell Reading Center in Emma's old Brooklyn neighborhood. They stood side by side, Alexander in a suit without a tie, Emma in a simple blue dress, both beaming as a group of children explored the brightly colored bookshelves around them. The article detailed the success of their initiative. 20 centers opened across the country, with plans for 50 more in underserved communities. It mentioned their upcoming wedding, scheduled for the following spring in the same church, where Alexander had once been left waiting. Ready to tempt fate? Emma had asked when he suggested the venue. It's not fate, Alexander had replied confidently. It's a second chance, in the place where I most need to rewrite history. In Alexander's office, now relocated to the same floor as Emma's, the framed first edition of the children's book held a place of honor beside the photograph of his father. Next to it stood a new edition, a candid shot of Alexander and Emma, on the second wind, laughing as they navigated through New York Harbor. The business world still marveled at the transformation of the man once known as the heartless billionaire. Competitors who had feared his ruthless tactics now found themselves dealing with a formidable but fair adversary. The Pierce Foundation had tripled its community impact under Emma's guidance, and Pierce Industries' employee satisfaction ratings had reached all-time highs. Victoria Carmichael had moved to Europe after her failed reconciliation attempt, occasionally appearing in tabloids on the arm of various aristocrats. The press had long since moved on from the scandal, now preferring to document the unlikely romance of Alexander and Emma, which had become something of a modern fairy tale. Do you ever miss it? Emma asked one evening as they sailed past the Statue of Liberty, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind them. The armor, the reputation, the heartless billionaire persona. Alexander considered the question, his arm secure around her waist. Sometimes, he admitted. In difficult negotiations, when competitors try to take advantage of perceived softness, he kissed the top of her head. But then I remember what I gained by letting it go. A chatty fiancé who questions your business decisions and makes you attend community theater performances? Emma teased. Precisely, Alexander agreed with perfect seriousness. The best deal I ever made. As they sailed into the sunset, a cliché neither of them minded embracing, the second wind cut smoothly through the waters of the harbor. Behind them, Manhattan's lights began to twinkle in the gathering dusk, a reminder of the world they'd both transformed by believing in second chances. Alexander Pierce, once the heartless billionaire of Wall Street, held the woman who had reminded him how to feel. And Emma Clark, who had never stopped believing in love despite disappointment, had found it in the most unlikely place, with a man who had needed her to believe in him before he could believe in himself.